states, subjective experiences in altered states. So our first speaker is Henk Barendrecht, still from Radboud University in Nijmegen. He's also an experienced meditator, and he will, from that perspective, he will discuss altered states.
Thank you very much. The philosophers give a name to what you are talking about. They call it phenomenology, studying consciousness from first person's perspective. So thank you for inviting me here. About 50 years ago, I was in my teens, and that was in the 60s. I was at Montessori Lyceum, Amsterdam, and the psychedelic culture started then, flower power. Now, in every teenager, almost every teenager, is protesting to what his father does, and the same with me. And this has had a special effect because I did not take psychedelics, because he, as a professor of psychology, was experimenting with LSD among the artists of that time. Simon Vinkenoog made headlines. I say it in Dutch. Ik voel me zo brood. Dat stond voor op de pagina van Vrij Nederland. I felt so much like bread. And an interesting statement. And as a teenager, you want to do something different from your father. So what did I do? I went to a symposium called Mysticism, Drugs and Meditation. The first speaker was a Christian mystic, and he described very interesting states of mind, but I could not do so much with the Christian background due to my upgrading. I was strictly atheist education I had. The second speaker was a psychiatrist who said, well, we have all those fantastic mystical experiences, but you have to work hard for that. So why don't you take a pill, then you can get there. He compared it to a cable going to the top of a mountain and no effort to come there. Then the third speaker was a Buddhist, and he said, well, we discourage the taking of drugs because you don't control everything there. In meditation you don't control it either, but still he discouraged it. And his speech and his style of being made it clear to me the Buddhist meditation was my choice. So I'm going to speak about that, and it may be interesting for you because similar states are described. Now, the notion of mind state, or rather mind stream, because a state is only interesting if it lasts for a little while, otherwise it is too ephemeral. But I will speak about mind states. Mind states include emotions, and as Nico Freida, colleague of my father, used to say, it's the readiness to act. But better, you can say a mind state has three aspects. The first aspect is phenomenological aspect, is how one feels. One can feel happy or unhappy, and if one is too unhappy, one may see a psychiatrist. A mind state has an effect on the body. Prolonged stress is not good for our immune system, so from healthy we may turn into sick, and we may see a doctor, need to see a doctor. Also, mind state has an effect on our behavior with consequences. We may have success, or we may fail or do asocial things, and we may need to see the police, or rather the police sees us. Two noticeable states from the daily life, but also through meditation and also in psychedelic research, are the euphoria state and the chaos. In mystical literature, the state of euphoria is described as the unity with God. However, the hypothesis of the superbeing is not necessary to understand mystical states. The philosopher Stahl has emphasized mystical experiences occur everywhere in all cultures, and one culture gives it this underpinning and another culture gives it another underpinning. And I will give the underpinning of the Buddhist. They identify it with concentration, high forms of concentration. How does one obtain a high form of concentration? Because the psychiatrist at the symposium in the 60s was right, you need to do some work. You do not get it for free. But it's not too difficult. You repeat focused attention, for example, on your breathing. Now it's interesting, as researcher, most of you know that there are two types of breathing. There is the directed breath, I do it on purpose. I conduct this. Or there's the autonomous breath that goes by itself, for example, when you read a book or when you are on your bicycle. What's interesting of meditation, especially insight meditation, is that the autonomous breath can be observed and it can remain autonomous. This is not completely trivial, but it's also not very hard. After 1 hour exercising, I can guide you to the observed autonomous breath. And that's the interesting one. Because if you observe your directed breath, well, you're doing in, out, and then you also observe that, but that's boring because you were doing it already yourself. And that's why most people fall asleep during meditation. Now you have to take your autonomous breath. Most meditation teachers don't have this language, but it's the autonomous breath that is important, and they know how to guide you there. But for you to understand it more quickly is this. Also, walking is a very good exercise. You're in your body, you do slowly lifting, trading, lifting, trading. So then concentration comes, and it is like a mystical state, unity with God, like the Christians say. It is euphoria, it is empathy, like I saw in the other lecture hall, that you can get also with drugs. Calm, in balance, at peace, or just after orgasm. Not the orgasm, but after orgasm, in which you're at peace. So probably endogenous opioids, like beta endorphins, are involved. What is the chaos? The chaos is like a dissociation, but more total. In psychiatry, a dissociation is that part of your consciousness you do not want to see, you suppress it, but other part is still functioning. In the total dissociation, all the parts are floating in pieces. How do you get there? Well, the increase of concentration may increase the resolution of it, and you can observe all your mind moments. The Buddhist theory, which is consistent with neuroscience, states that consciousness is not a continuous stream, but it comes in flashes, one after the other, maybe of 100 milliseconds each. And when your resolution is that big that you can see them, then you freak out, because the fine coordination of the components don't work so much anymore, because you see a steadily pumping machine without any involvement of ourselves. Our consciousness just goes. But don't we have a will? Don't we have intentions? Yes, we do have a will and intention, but that's part of the machine. Yes, good to laugh. You understood what I'm saying. And now more people start and say, everything is determined. So that's freaky. In Buddhism, that's called anatta, non-self. And it fluctuates a lot, especially if the coordination doesn't work anymore so well. But then the survival mechanism that is in each of us starts to come, and we want to come up and we want to hold on to something. And with this hold, we get back control and we get back the illusion of agency, and then we can survive, more or less. So emotions are a kind of hold. So feeling kindness, metta meditation works. Compassion meditation works. But also dysfunctional emotions work. So being depressed gives you a hold, but then you're stuck to being depressed, so that's not good. That's dysfunctional. But all those emotions, but also ideas, even wrong ideas, and then you get into the, in Dutch, the waan, what is that in English, the delusions of the psychotic. They're symptomatic solace. They give you back the illusionary self, but in a symptomatic way, because you have to hold yourself to either the emotion or the idea. So the chaos then disappears, but is covered up by the emotional ideas is a cofactor of psychopathology. Now, what is the goal of insight meditation? You may think, well, that is the euphoria, but no, that is not the case. The euphoria is just a means, not the goal. John of the Cross, Johannes van het Kruis, Juan de la Cruz, was a mystic 500 years ago. He said the same. He said, do not indulge in the gluttony for God. Quite strong language. He was kicked out of the church, by the way, for such statements. To be made a saint 100 years later. Quite interesting how things go. And the meditators say, but this state is the ultimate bliss. I want to keep it. May I enjoy it for a short moment. But then the meditation teacher says, it's a waste of time. I got very interested at that moment. This utter bliss, the best I felt in my life. Is there something better? Is there something better? That made me really meditate. And I have still 2.5 slides more, so you will hear till the end. What's the goal? The goal is not minding non-concentration. The goal is not minding chaos. And one obtains the insight that things are beyond control. You remember I described this pumping machine of my consciousness, of our consciousness, going on and on. No control. That makes us afraid because we had the illusion of being an agent that was in control. And our instinctive self-defense said, where is the control? And it's this protest, this innate who's in charge of the
the machine is in control, I guess.
But you did something with that.
No, I did not.
No, but before, to make it look. Yeah, so if you stand by, please. Our ego, what is the ego? That's the idea, the illusionary idea, to be a fixed agent in the center of the universe. Didn't you think this morning that you were in the center of the universe? I did. I hope you too. But that's an illusion. We are not in the center of the universe. And another illusion is that we are in control, but that's not the case. So this ego is vulnerable. Well, some people have had a very good education, had a lot of luck, so they had a good job and everything is okay. Still, that ego is vulnerable because they have to die. Not we, but they have to die. Okay? So it's always vulnerable. So the work is towards not minding emptiness, not minding non-ego. And why? Well then, this has wholesome corollaries, no fear of death and mental flexibility. And once we know the illusion of ego, we can use it, but just as a useful illusion. We put on a mask of our personality, and maybe another time another mask. That's fine, but we know it. So how does one do it? And that's the path, finding another hold. And that is the groundless ground of consciousness, what the philosophers call the qualia. Everyone knows the redness of red. But it's not even the redness of red, it's more the light. And the problem is that, well, first I'm going to explain that groundless ground better, but first we need equanimity to get there. We need being calm and joy, and to surrender with determination. And then we have to look the void into the eyes. The void is the emptiness, the non-ego that we are afraid of. It looks like a menacing tiger, so it's always in the back of ourselves. But we have to look at it. And when we look it into the eyes, it turns out that it is a sweet pussycat, and you can cuddle with it. Because you were the one who made the fear. It's self-made. It's a defense mechanism. That's all. Still, it may take a long time to realize that. Now, what is the groundless ground? The metaphor of this is the following. In the ungraspable stream of life, consciousness, suppose there are many images coming by all the time, don't focus on the content, but on the background. What's the background? That is this white or this gray color here. That's the background. There is stability there. It's nothing, but at least stability. And that's the basis on which you can overcome the existential fear. And after that, one can deal with content more fearlessly and more freely. And that's the end of the story.
Thank you very much. We have plenty of time for questions, and I already see one.
Thank you very much for a very inspiring talk. I have one question. There appears to be a contradiction which has to do with the teleology, with the fact that it's goal-orientated. Because you describe the transformation to becoming more wholesome. But then again, if the chaos is always there, it will always kick us off this wholesomeness and this enlightenment back into the chaos, which is unwholesome. And I would see that this non-dualism of the chaos will always be there, and therefore it would never be able to really release that.
May I translate your question a bit, and you have to say yes, that covers it. So there are 2 points. There seems to be a path towards a goal, but if you're goal-directed, it's ego that does it, and there seems to be a contradiction there. Is that the kind of and then the second part is the chaos is unwholesome and the concentration is wholesome. Well, I like to say something about it. First of all, the chaos is not unwholesome. What's unwholesome is our clinging and our avoiding it. That's unwholesome. So pleasure is not wholesome, and pain is not unwholesome. That's for the hedonist, and most of us are, including me, are hedonists, so we think that pleasure is wholesome and that pain is unwholesome, but that's not the case. What is unwholesome is that we cling to pleasure and we fight against pain. That's unwholesome. So we have to adjust there. I go back to your first question, the goal and the non-goal. Suppose there is a child and has seen on TV or in real life somebody playing the piano fantastically, and the child says, I want to become a pianist. And the parents say, yeah, that's fine, you can go to piano lessons, and the child practice. And after a while, he can play for his grandmother, and he asked the teacher, while he's playing, am I already a pianist? No, don't ask such questions. Play the notes that are here and now. And in this way, you will become a pianist. So once you have decided to become a pianist, that gives you the power to practice. But once you're practicing, you have to forget that you want to become a pianist and just play. So there is some thing to do there.
This is a very nice analogy. Thank you very much for that. Do you actually think that becoming a pianist can be achieved by either practicing on the piano or by using drugs?
No, I think you have to practice your muscles also. Yeah. But if you already an achieved piano player, Lipatti was ill in the hospital and had to play a concert, but he had no piano in the hospital. So he asked for the score and he played everything in his mind, and then he was prepared for his concert. But he was Dino Lipatti.
So that was also something that my question actually was, somebody told me this morning, the use of drugs and the more natural ways of altered consciousness, however you would want to put it, are both two ways to the same goal. Do you agree with that?
I agree with the possibility, but still, for becoming a pianist, you need the finger speed.
Okay.
And drugs may be a good enhancer of artistic values.
Well, I'm a fire artist. I play with poi. I don't know if you know that. Basically, my question is regarding flow state of mind. You're talking about meditation. I unfortunately don't do that. For me to come in such a state of consciousness where I'm in the present moment, I use my fire tools to do a performance. Some may ski down a hill and be in a challenging position where your mind needs to be very observant so that you don't crash yourself in a tree on the black beast. Could you comment on any of these state of minds? Would that be similar to meditation where you are in the present and in the now?
Yes. There are many ways to obtain concentration, and arts, jumbling, how you call that, acrobatics, many things, sports, dancing, will reach to high degree of concentration. Meditation goes one step further, namely being ready to accept non-concentration, to accept the chaos and to deal with that. But even through art and a good teacher, you may get there.
But if you're dancing and you're not thinking and you're just doing your thing.
Yeah, but there is no chaos. Chaos is when your consciousness falls apart and you don't hear the music anymore, and the music is not synchronous with what you see, that falling apart. That's, but I can imagine that even going through there together with your dance teacher and your meditation teacher, you can get there. But you need two teachers then.
We have time for two quick more questions.
What, two there?
One and two.
Oh.
Yes or
Sorry.
no? It's yes or no.
Ah, that's very quick.
One yes or no question. You described the stream of consciousness as a lot of pictures. I'm suggesting from the physics world, like a light is also a wave and a particle. Could you look at it, at consciousness, in the same manner? As a photon of energy, you know?
No, we cannot look so refined. That's on the Planck
it's
level.
A stream of pictures, but I say it's energy, you know?
How you call it, but anyway, I haven't considered it, and maybe can be
Take
done.
it as a no, okay?
So it's a
Say
no.
yes or
Yeah,
no.
no, it's a no.
Okay, last question.
I have a question about attachment.
A little bit harder.
Louder.
I have a question about attachments. I find it easy to accept to not get attached to negative emotions and feelings. How are you supposed to operate with not being attached to positive, deep emotions about other people?
Yes. So how do we detach from pleasurable feelings? In the same way as you get detached from unpleasant feelings, so we learn in the monastery, you sit, there is pain, oh, pain, oh, pain there. And then something pleasant comes, like the mystical state, oh, pleasure, oh, better than orgasm. So that's one way. The Tibetans, they have tantra rituals where they have sexual practice for going towards enlightenment, and then they have to make love for 6 hours without an orgasm. So that's an exercise that you may like to